Hello, everyone, and welcome to Curvegrid X OMG Network, the supply side of Community Points webinar. I'm Vicky, and I'm very excited to be hosting this event for you all. Thank you for joining us today. As you guys know, the OMG Network released the Community Points engine as a submission for the Great Reddit Scaling Bake-Off, but not a lot of people understand how it actually works and how the supply side of the CPE came to be. So today with our friends from Curvegrid, we're going to be holding this webinar, and we are going to be tackling a couple of things. And just to do a quick run through of the program. Oops, apologies. Yeah, just to do a quick run through of the program, we're going to kick things off with a CPE supply side webinar and Q&A session with Dan from Curvegrid, who is their software engineer. And then after that, we're going to have a fireside chat, which is going to be a very relaxed type of conversation between our team and Curvegrid, where we will be having Jeff, co-founder of Curvegrid, Dan, their software engineer, who will be doing the webinar as well, Pong from our team, who is our technical product manager, and Jake, who is our lead site reliability engineer. And then after that, we're going to keep the floor open for some virtual networking sessions. So if you're keen on meeting the OMG Network team or the Curvegrid team, then that would be the best time to approach us. And just if you have any questions, form. So without further ado, Dan, could you please turn on your camera and your microphone so that you could start the presentation?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, this evening, wherever you might find yourself in the world. My name's Dan. I've been with Curvegrid for 2 years, working as a software engineer. And before we dive right into the dashboard, I just want to give a brief overview of our product, MultiBass, and general summary of what we built. So I'll share my screen here. Let's see. Okay, should be good to go. Awesome. So our product, MultiBass, is a blockchain middleware solution focused on enterprise. Here at Curvegrid, we're a team of 7 blockchain engineers based in Tokyo. And MultiBass has been under development since 2017. So we have had a lot of building on Ethereum, working with blockchain, and we've encountered, as many of you, I'm sure, have, many of the stumbling points associated with working with such a cutting-edge technology. So what MultiBass aims to solve is basically reducing the friction associated with building on the blockchain. So working with blockchain, the cost of implementation is high. Blockchain engineers are in very high demand. And just the general technical complexity of building on the blockchain, interacting with the blockchain is quite high relative to just standard software development. It's really like a special skill set you must have in order to build on top of the blockchain. There's a steep learning curve, and it really doesn't need to be there, basically. It's a lot of the problems we face are a result of insufficient tooling, basically, not having the right skills for the job. And so we've created MultiBass, which aims to bridge enterprise to the blockchain without the associated cost. So MultiBass is a ready-made toolkit designed to provide everything you need to build on top of the blockchain, interact with the blockchain, quickly iterate on a decentralized application, and so on. So we provide a familiar development interface for interacting with the blockchain. And this allows normal software engineers who may have not had a lot of training working with blockchain specifically to quickly start interacting with the blockchain, whether that's deploying smart contracts or calling smart contract methods, or even doing more complex operations such as what we offer through event queries, which basically allows you to flatten contract event data to gain insight into the current state of the blockchain, of a smart contract on the blockchain. And all this is offered with modern infrastructure and all the bells and whistles you'd expect of enterprise software. We'll go into further detail on the next slides here. So zooming in just on the last quadrant, essentially what we offer through MultiBass is enterprise wallets. We'll be making heavy use of this throughout the demo of the Reddit community point dashboard, as well as native support for multi-sig transactions, basically letting you sign and submit multi-sig transactions without having to manually compose a transaction, and event queries, which I mentioned previously. And with regards to the bells and whistles you'd expect from enterprise software, we have role-based access control, API keys, cross-origin resource sharing, and additionally 2FA and user management, all through MultiBass. We have some plugins that also assist with interacting with the blockchain. Specifically, we recently released we're currently finalizing the release of a spreadsheet plugin, which we built during the ETH Global DeFi hackathon. I believe it was in July. So stay tuned for that. But basically, that allows you to pull blockchain data directly into a Google Sheet spreadsheet, which I think is quite cool. So zooming into the Reddit community points dashboard specifically, here's a rough overview of the architecture of what we built. So we have the WebUI, which organizes and provides access to essentially the MultiBass API, the REST API. And through MultiBass, we're able to read data from the blockchain. We're able to write data to the blockchain in the form of either ETH transfers or interactions with smart contracts. We are able to sign transactions programmatically using our enterprise HSM wallet feature, which basically you can think of as a cloud wallet, a cloud signer. So instead of having to manually sign transactions using a Python script or using MetaMask, we can do this securely through interacting with the MultiBass REST API. So you have your API keys to access the endpoint, and you are able to request the enterprise HSM wallet to sign and submit transactions on your behalf, which really opens the door to building decentralized applications and integrating existing software solutions with the blockchain. We'll go into further detail during our fireside chat. And so MultiBass basically sits between your decentralized application, in this case, the Reddit dashboard, and the blockchain. So instead of interacting directly with the blockchain through, let's say, Web3.js, MultiBass offers a REST API, so post JSON and get JSON back to interact with the blockchain. And the advantage of this is that, every software engineer knows what the REST API is, right? Every software engineer has at least a good understanding of how to interact with another application through REST API. So this really cuts out a lot of the middlemen required between your decentralized application and the blockchain. And so what we built for this great scaling bake-off for Reddit in conjunction with the OMG Network team is an authenticated DApp. So log in to FA, role-based access control API keys. And this DApp bridges the gap between the Ethereum and OMG networks. So now instead of interacting with two different blockchain nodes, you have a single interface for interacting with the blockchain. And as you might imagine, this allows us to integrate with the blockchain much faster, since there's only a single point of integration, which is MultiBass. And this Reddit dashboard complements the Community Points Engine Chrome browser extension, which you might have heard of separately, which allows users to transfer their community points. But what our dashboard focuses on is allowing subreddit moderators to create and distribute community points to the users of the subreddit. So let's dive into not so live demo, unfortunately. We were hoping to do this live on Robston, but as some of you might be aware, or Robston rather, is having some issues at the moment. I think they might even be having some kind of forking issue. So instead of doing a live demo on Robston, I'll just be talking through the steps required, the steps that I would have done normally. So let me share my screen here. Pardon me while I find the correct tab. I believe this should be it. Okay, great. Looking good. Okay, so yeah, here we are at the Reddit Community Points dashboard. Yes, thank you, Jake. Indeed, Robson is behind schedule. Yeah, so here we have the Community Points dashboard for Reddit. And I should first mention that everything's wrapped behind login, right? Pardon me. There we are. And let me just fix my network so we'll connect to Robston. And there we are. So this is the front page of the dashboard. And this provides essentially all the functionality required for day-to-day interactions with the Community Points smart contracts, as would be required by the subreddit moderators. So at the top, we have the specific subreddit distribution contract that we'd be interacting with. You can see I was playing around with it earlier, but these are the two official distribution contracts. And below we have the methods, essentially the actions that moderators would perform in order to mint new points and distribute these points on the OMG network. And we support a single address. You can add addresses individually, or you can add multiple recipients. So do bulk distribution by specifying a list of addresses and the amount of subreddit point tokens you wish to give each one. But this dashboard is really just an abstraction of the interaction with the blockchain you'd be having. This is a sort of convenience, a convenient view for how you'd interact with Ethereum and the OMG network for basic distribution of tokens. But deeper within MultiBass, under the advanced menu here, we have all the contracts, right? We have a full view into the distribution smart contract, So we can see the state variables, the global state variables on top, the events, and the methods for interacting with the smart contract. So I'm just going to walk through the steps required to launch a subreddit point smart contract and interact with it through the dashboard. So we'd actually start here with a subreddit point smart contract. And this is essentially an ERC20 token. I think the specification was reduced to match just what we need for the subreddit point itself. And you would start by deploying a new instance of this smart contract. So normally, I would click this button here, and I would sign and submit contract deployment transaction using the HSM. So normally you'd be using MetaMask. And if you were to sign using MetaMask, you would have to confirm through, well, first of all, you'd have to have the MetaMask extension. But what the HSM functionality allows for is for you to simply fire and forget, so to speak. Submit the HSM transaction directly to MultiBass and have the enterprise wallet sign this transaction, submit it to the blockchain. So having submitted, having deployed the smart contract, we would find ourselves back at this page, and we would have an address, a deployment address for this subreddit point smart contract. But in order to distribute, just due to the architecture of the community points distribution system, there's an additional smart contract which you must deploy, which is the distribution smart contract. And once we deploy it, you can see we have to specify the address of the smart contract. So these are essentially the parameters to the constructor of the distribution contract. So we specify the subreddit point contract, which is the contract we would have just deployed, the decay percent, since each subsequent round of point minting results in a reduced supply, and the owner, which is us in this case, the address deploying the system. So having done that, you would deploy the distribution smart contract. And then since the distribution contract is actually what mints new tokens, we would set the subreddit point smart contract to be the owner of, we would set the distribution contract to be the owner of the subreddit point smart contract. And we would do this by calling the transfer ownership function. And for the new owner, we would specify the address of the distribution contract. Having done that, we would arrive basically in this state where this distribution contract, 0xDEF, is set as the owner of this subreddit point smart contract, right? So now we have one smart contract, which the distribution smart contract, which is the owner and will be interacting with the subreddit point smart contract. While we're in this view, we can also take a look at what's going on the Ethereum side of the of the OMG network. So we have the payment exit game, which is how you exit the OMG network. We have the Plasma framework, which is the smart contract which basically ties the other smart contracts together. And we have two vaults, right? So we have the ERC20 vault, which is the smart contract into which we would be depositing ERC20 tokens on Ethereum in order for those ERC20 tokens, in order for those assets to become available on the OMG network. And on the ERC20 vault, as you can see, we have this deposit method, which requires an RLP encoded transaction that acts as a deposit. So take note of this, right? This would actually be hex code, right? An RLP encoded transaction to normally deposit funds, but I'll show you how we managed to simplify that through our dashboard. Right. So what have we done so far? We've deposited this. We've deployed a subreddit point smart contract. We've deployed the distribution contract, and we've set the distribution contract to be the owner of the subreddit point smart contract. Having done so, we would add the distribution contract up here. For simplicity, I'm just going to select the last one we had. And pardon me, there's one more step I missed, and that is initializing the distribution. And we do this by calling the init round method of the distribution smart contract, which is essentially creating the first round of distribution. So you would create 1 million new tokens and submit it. While we're here, we can also take a quick look at the one useful feature. So briefly switching back to the subreddit point smart contract, you may notice that there are 18 decimals to this ERC20 token. So what that means is this total supply here. This looks like an absurdly long number, right? But in fact, it's just 1 million. So here I can demo the decimals type conversion. Update that. And there we go. So now we are correctly shifting the decimals in the total supply to match what is specified by the smart contract as the total number of decimals. Great. So having done so, in the distribution, we would start off by initializing the round. So what I did previously was I minted 1 million tokens. Sign and submit that using the HSM. And having done so, you are ready to mint and distribute points through the dashboard. For day-to-day interactions, you would simply call the advanced next round function of the distribution smart contract. And this would allow subreddit moderators to mint new points and prepare them for distribution. Here we can also see the subreddit point smart contract, which could be useful for other interactions. Having minted the points through the distribution smart contract, we would need to next approve the ERC20 vault to spend a certain amount of points on our behalf. So what I did previously is I approved the ERC20 vault to withdraw 1 million tokens from the distribution contract to the ERC20 vault. I think we should be able to take a brief look here. Okay, no, they already moved. But perhaps we can take a look at this instead. So I'm just going to get the address of the ERC20 vault and the balance of this. There we go. So the ERC20 vault is holding this token on behalf of us and making it available on the OMG network. Currently with this smart contract, the distribution was already complete. So those points are no longer held by us and have been distributed to other addresses. But having first authorized the subreddit point, having authorized the ERC20 vault to spend our tokens on our behalf, withdraw our tokens on our behalf, you would next call the deposit method of the ERC20 vault smart contract, where you can simply specify how many tokens you would like to deposit into the OMG network. And remember previously where I showed that, in fact, the deposit method accepts basically hex data, which is an RLP encoded transaction, deposit transaction. Here on the dashboard, we've abstracted it in such a way that instead of having to compute this transaction yourself, you just need to specify the amount of the token you wish to shift, wish to move rather, to the ERC20 vault. So once again, you would submit the HSM transaction, and under normal circumstances, if the ROPS network was working correctly, after a couple of blocks, that deposit would become reflected within the OMG network, and we would see this balance appear. And having done that, we can distribute, right? So an amount, an address, add to recipient list, distribute all. And thanks to the power of the OMG network, the ERC20 token deposit would quickly become available to the list of recipients as specified through this dashboard. So that wraps up the demo of the OMG network Reddit points, subreddit points, community points dashboard. And I'd like to open up the floor to some questions, perhaps about the dashboard itself, or some of the functionality available through MultiBass that allowed us to build this dashboard in the span of a month, which I can't imagine. I don't know about you, but I can't imagine building a decentralized application from scratch in that period of time. But thanks to the development teams of the OMG network, as well as our team, Curvegrid, we were able to submit our proof of concept application, which runs on the mainnet, I should mention, all in the span of 1 month.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. Now, guys, if you do have any questions, there's a Q&A tab. If you guys can see it on your right side, feel free to drop questions there. And we're going to be opening this Q&A for 10 minutes. If you have any specific questions, feel free to drop it there. And after this, we're going to be moving forward to the fireside chat.
Okay, so Erica asks oh, okay, there we go. So the print behind me is a photo I took in Canada 2 years ago. I'll share more maybe in the discussion following it, but this was back in Canada, had some very nice clouds that day. So I managed to capture an interesting moment and recently turned it into an aluminum print. So Jake asks, what JavaScript libraries did you use to create the dashboard? So in terms of JavaScript libraries, we used Ethers.js for interacting with MetaMask, since we do also support local signers. But in addition to that, we used OMG.js for some interactions with the OMG network, though we are working on integrating as much functionality as possible directly into MultiBass for interacting with the OMG network. We used bignumber.js, which was required for formatting some of these, some data as we passed it between OMG and the front end. But other than that, I mean, it's just pretty bare bones. In terms of the UI, we used Vuetify, Vue.js and Vuetify for the front end components, and Axios for post requests. Post, get, basically REST API interactions. We used Axios. But altogether, not very JavaScript heavy, which I think is one of the benefits, again, of using a middleware solution. As I'm not up to date on the current status of Web3.js, but last I checked, it was absurdly bloated, right? Like, I think at least 5 megabytes altogether. And there really is no need for that bloated of a library. So Alex asks, in your experience, will those mods be able to use a dashboard without some training? It's a very good question. So for day-to-day interactions, I would say yes. Everything is set up and available. Once initialized, I should say, everything is available through this dashboard. For day-to-day flow, you would simply select the distribution contract you want to interact with. Under the distribution tab, you would call advance to next round and mint some new points. Then you would call approve. So approve the ERC20 vault to withdraw the freshly minted points on your behalf. And then you would call deposit to deposit those freshly minted points into the OMG network. Then you'd simply move on to the distribution section and submit all the recipients and the amounts you wish to. Just realized I'm not sharing my screen. My apologies. Yeah, so once again, under the distribution tab, you would mint new points by calling advance next round. Then you would approve those points to be withdrawn. You would deposit those points into the ERC20 vault, and then you would distribute. So for day-to-day interactions, it's all quite centralized, and you could learn how to do this through, I think, a fairly concise document. There are certainly some optimizations we could have made. For example, I think advanced next round is a little more complicated than it should be. I think we could simplify this to simply how many new points do you want to mint. But again, we were working under a pretty tight time constraints. So we strive to get 95% of the way there in the designated time period. So in summary, Alex, I think with minimal training, someone who is savvy enough to be a moderator on a subreddit should be able to operate this dashboard with minimal friction. So I'm seeing another question here. What did you do to get type transaction implemented on MultiBass? Any details on how this works on the back end? So I assume this refers to basically signing type transactions. So for those who are not too familiar, OMG Network Transactions are of a certain format, which is not the same as a normal Ethereum transaction. OMG uses, I believe it's EIP 712 so typed data. And in order to allow for these transactions to be signed and submitted by the backend, we had to implement the necessary steps to format or receive transactions of this format. But other than that, we're essentially just signing a hash and returning a signature in a similar manner to how we would with an Ethereum transaction. So it's really just a matter of getting the data from point A to point B in the correct shape and form to allow it to be signed with fairly typical methods, SecP 256K1 and so on. So Erica asks, how did you get up to speed on OMG integration? So the OMG network is kind enough to provide a quite comprehensive developer docs, I believe available at docs.omg.network.com. Should be quite apparent from the homepage. Yeah, so here we go. Developers, documentation. Yeah, docs.omg.network.com. And this basically provided us with all the information we needed from the Plasma contracts, which I previously mentioned, the Plasma framework, the payment exit game, the F vault, ERC vault, in addition to the block explorer, right, which is quite helpful for debugging transactions or really just making sure that they, hit the network, that they were received by the watcher. And also we have API references for the OMG watcher, which is essentially the node you communicate with to interact with the OMG network. And I think this, in conjunction with the OMG.js API, was the most useful set of references for getting up to speed with the OMG network. In conjunction with that, working with the very talented team of the OMG network, collaborating through Slack, through all sorts of collaborative platforms, we were able to, bring two, it's like plugging two things in together, right? So they're working on their side from the OMG network, and we're working sort of from the Ethereum / middleware side, and we're able to collaborate quite efficiently. So Real Fake Doris asks, you mentioned the enterprise wallet is being used for paying for the deployments. Can you show the backend from the enterprise point of view? Paying for the deployment. So yeah, paying. The enterprise wallet is used to sign and submit transactions instead of MetaMask. So rather than having MetaMask pop up, ask you, do you approve this transaction to be sent? Instead, we're just making an API call to MultiBass. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but you can see here, everything we're doing through the front end is just an API call, right? So by clicking send method, oh, something wrong there. But by clicking send method, we would be doing the equivalent of this API call. And here you see the two arguments as specified above. We have the gas price. We have the from address, which is the HSM, the enterprise wallet, and the signer, which again is the HSM wallet. But really all we're doing is calling post on this endpoint. So contracts, distribution method, advance to next round with these methods, with these parameters. So I'm a little confused by what you mean by show the backend from the enterprise point of view. MultiBass integrates with some cloud providers that offer HSMs. These cloud providers basically have the hardware, have the infrastructure to store private keys on your behalf securely, right? In a similar manner that a bank would store its integration keys. So for all intents and purposes, it's as secure as any hot wallet really is. And it allows for dApps to operate without MetaMask, essentially. All the Web3 functionality can be coming in directly from the middleware layer. All the interactions with a smart contract can be handled by an HSM wallet rather than having to get the user to install MetaMask, initialize it with a 12-word or 24-word mnemonic phrase and trust that the user saves that somewhere, right? Like all of this can be abstracted away to simply providing the user with an HSM wallet that they can use for interaction with the dApp. Great. Thank you for the questions, everyone.
You were able to answer all the good ones. Yeah, so thank you so much again, Dan. We're just gonna move forward to the fireside chat. So do stay on screen, but maybe stop sharing your other screen. And may I please ask Jeff, Pong, and Jake to turn on their cameras and your microphones for the fireside chat. Great. Thank you so much, guys. I will be showing you the questions, but feel free to chat away. But before we kick things off, please do a round of intros. Let's start with Jeff.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Vicky. I'm Jeff Wentworth, co-founder of Curvegrid. Very excited to be here today and talking about the Reddit Community Points Engine dashboard.
Great. And from our team, we have Jake.
Hey guys, I'm Jake. I lead the infrastructure team at OMG Network. Been with the company for around 2 years now, and I was one of the people working on this project from the OMG Network side.
Last but not the least, Pong.
Hey everyone, my name is Pong. I'm a technical product manager here at OMG Network, and I work with Jake on the Community Points Engine on this project. And DK, I got my coffee mug right here.
Great. To kick things off, we have the first question. What was the product development process that goes into building CPE from a month, from ideation, middleware assistance, etc.?
Yeah, I can take this one. There is quite a lot involved to get the product out from basically from just zero to something that people can actually use, especially in production with a on OMG Network. So to begin with, we really started with the outcome in mind. So with what we wanted to do is to just get an actual, we can submit this documentation, we can submit a proposal, but we'd rather have something that's live and usable that they can integrate with. So with that said, that leads us to actual application design, defining some of the assumptions that we have on the project, how we're going to do things. So that's when we went with the theory layer design and then the actual extension as a client so that the actual Redditors can make transactions on the network. Then after the design process, the UI, UX, we really go into shipping the product. And Even in the middle of that, we do multiple rounds of internal testing on Ropsten network. And of course, last but not least, actually shipping this thing and making sure that we provide a comprehensive documentation along with the project. And the final stage, of course, is marketing, communications, really polishing everything and making sure everything is ready to go. Pushing stuff into production alongside the moderator dashboard, so that we can have a full end-to-end working prototype that Reddit can actually inspect. And yeah, all of that was under 1 month.
If just to add some perspective from the Curvegrid side as well, I mean, the scale of Reddit is just amazing, right? Isn't it something like 600 million monthly active users? That's like 1/10 of the population of the planet. Like, the scale is just outstanding, right? And so, obviously this is a proof of concept. We got to get it done quickly. But when we went into it, we thought, well, what are the kinds of features and functionality that we want to showcase if you're going to be building this like planet scale points distribution platform, right? And it's only going to get bigger. I mean, the user numbers are only growing, right? And so, you've got 600 million or whatever it is, monthly active users. You've got tens of thousands of active subreddits. You've got, hundreds of thousands of users per subreddit. And so, I think some of the features that we prioritized, at least on the supply side, were enterprise wallets, two-factor authentication, audit log, REST API, the features that, I mean, there was a question, I think, during the Dan's demo around, could a moderator use the dashboard? Absolutely. But is this really what the final integration is going to look like? I mean, yeah, there might be some manual work, but really, the minting and distribution of points is going to be hooked up to some sort of like giant automated process that Reddit has working in their data centers already. And so, we wanted to be able to show like, yeah, we can not only build a dashboard to do this, but it's got all the connecting pieces in there to really, operate at scale. And so, from our side, that was a lot of the kind of the ideation that went into it when we were building this.
Yeah, and I think this, just to add on to that, the one word that you used was just priority, right? If you have a fixed time to deliver a product, then as far as like the project management, the golden triangle has defined is that you have time to choose between either the quality or the feature sets that you've decided to do. So I think it's all the matter of prioritization.
Great. Now let's jump on to the next one. What were some of the challenges that you encountered when building the OMG Reddit CPE?
Well, I guess this one follows on nicely from the first one. I mean, one of the big ones for us was the time constraints. I mean, we from the moment that we had the invitation to tender from Reddit and to the actual delivery of the not only the engineering deliverable, but the documentation that went along with it, the communication, the branding that we went, everything as well. It was, we had 4 weeks or so to do this, and that was a significant challenge. I really enjoyed working with my colleagues at the OMG Network. There's many different teams that this touched, not only engineering, but of course all the other teams. There was product, there was security, there was our marketing and communications team, designs, and yeah, it was really nice to see everybody come together, work hard, and get a quality product that we can all be proud of.
Thank you, Jeff. On the dashboard side of things, something we struggled with, well, not struggled, but I guess a challenge we faced, rather, was creating basically an abstract, abstracting everything correctly. Since, we were testing locally, we were testing on Ropsten, and then the final distribution was happening on mainnet, right? So each environment has its own set of smart contracts. Some were deployed by us, some were deployed by other folks at the OMG network team. And the nuances of the different platforms, like for example, on Ropsten, on the OMG network, the fee is paid in ETH, but as we know on mainnet, on the OMG network, the payment, the fee, the transaction fee is paid in OMG tokens. So throughout development, we just had to be mindful of all these nuances of the project, and making sure basically that the correct value is available when the correct environment is in action. But thanks to the help of the OMG network as well as the documentation, we were able to double check, triple check that everything was set up correctly and ready for the distribution on mainnet.
Pong, how did you feel about the requirements from Reddit?
From Reddit?
I think that's right. From like the actual Reddit. You mean like actual Reddit team themselves, right? That make the RFP.
Yeah, from the original post that went out on the Ethereum subreddit.
Right. I think on that front, like so I have a few opinions on this. So their document is very like extensive, right? It's very detailed. So obviously it's like they definitely know what they want with the layer 2 solutions. Like my gripe with it is that as a solution provider, like or an infrastructure provider really, to offer something that truly solves a problem for the customers or for the clients, you really need to be collaborating, right? I understand the format is a competition, so you have this like fixed timeline, you have this like outcomes that you need to accomplish, but like the elements that is missing is ability to talk and just back and forth and collaborate with the customers, and that's how you really know that you have a product that solves customers' problem, right? So I think the challenge is building out, although it's just 1 month, but building that out while not being able to ask questions or really interactively discussing with Reddit about what they want.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember when you and I were discussing sometime before the deadline that many of the other proposals that had come through were mostly focused on just creating transactions. Now, to us, what does that really mean? I mean, what does that really mean to Reddit? There's always intention behind a transaction. So this is one of the reasons why we wanted to demonstrate as part of this deliverable that we had the capability that we set out to fulfill from the original requirements. So we made it very easy to do so. Dimitri did a great job with the technical documentation, and that was included in there as well. And that was a fantastic way to kind of validate some of the original requirements.
It was interesting too how they weren't starting from zero, right? Like they've done kind of at least 1, maybe 2 rounds of sort of testing on at least a test network. I don't know, maybe not mainnet, but one of the test networks with previous tokens. I think they did one like a year ago, and then there's one that's sort of ongoing right now with Fortnite and the cryptocurrency subreddit, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so like the clearly the requirements came from their experiences with that, and it was interesting how they jumped like the kind of 2 things: got to be like anchored to Ethereum, and has to be a layer 2 solution, because I think they knew that it just like it was not going to work otherwise. And so yeah, I mean when we're speaking with companies or organizations that want to get into blockchain, you often have to have like that conversation first, like which blockchain or why or what are your requirements. So it was a good fit, right? So it's a perfect fit for OMG Network. But yeah, like that we sort of like skipped all of that. We went right to kind of the implementation piece. Yeah, and often, I mean, coming back to what you're saying, Pong, about how it typically being like this something of this scale being very collaborative, and especially for a platform like Reddit, right? It's all about like having a big discussion about it. But I think most of the teams sort of labored in quiet because of the kind of the parameters of this. And then, yeah, I mean, there were very few touch points with the Reddit team, at least from our perspective. So that was interesting as well. So we'll see. I guess we'll see how it turns out going forward.
Right. And I think just not to linger on too long on this point, but like eventually you're gonna have to interact with the customers, right? Like real end users, whether that is like an actual Reddit moderators that are moderating and moderating this community, or it's a Reddit user, right? That to try out and test and making sure that things actually work. So it's a question of like this fidelity and like getting feedback from customers, which is missing from most RFPs, I think.
Well, I like what you guys have done with the Chrome extension. It's just a really slick experience, and it's sort of like, well, we're not only going to show that we can do this and have the stats around the transaction per second, et cetera, but we're just going to go do it. So, I mean, that's been great to watch, like the rocks flying around, in the rock garden on r/OMG Network, and people really getting into it. It's sort of like a real like proof of not just proof of concept, but like in reality, it's actually working and going on there with maybe not the customer in terms of Reddit, but the end users, the end customer, which is all of Reddit's users, which is very cool to see.
Yeah, and speaking of throwing rocks around, let's jump into the next question, which is, why does sending rocks through the community points extension not incur a transaction fee?
I feel like I'm on Jeopardy here, and I have to buzz in quickly. Because you see the squares on the screen and the blue background.
Dun, 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 dun.
Nice.
Who wants to take this?
I can explain just really quickly about how the feeless transaction actually works. So original, I think, goal right from the Reddit, from the requirement, is to not let user having to pay transaction fee. On the Ethereum world, this is feeless transaction, or otherwise known as meta transaction. The way that OMG Network actually handles transactions with a UTXO model actually allows us to pretty natively let user make a transaction without having to pay for fees. So right now we are accepting OMG tokens as a fee. When we achieve a feeless transaction, so we have what we call a fee relayer server that takes a user's transaction, adds a input of themselves. So the fee relayer's input to absorb the fee for the end users. So it's paying on behalf of the end users. The user, from their perspective, they don't have to really know that they need to have OMGs or any fee tokens or stuff like that. They just have to have those points available. So I'm gonna let me check on a Block Explorer, and I'll send you just a link to demonstrate how the feeless transaction actually works.
And I mean, while you're looking that up, like this is definitely like a top request of so many people that we talk to. It's very, and always a challenge on Ethereum. And we solve it obviously up with a combination of multi-sig wallets, as well as the enterprise wallets, the hardware security modules, the HSMs. But having it built into the protocol like this is just really, I think, a really slick experience for the end users.
Yeah. I think on that tangent, right? With the UTXO module, you can do really, really creative transactions, just with what the protocol actually allows. So right now it's 4x4 inputs and outputs, but with the different transaction types that we can add onto the network, and even with just the 4x4, there are even crazier transactions that a user can do to really optimize for cost. Like even also, just to give an example of the Curvegrid dashboard, right? How when you do a distribution, what you do is you make 2 outputs reserved for 2 users. So as opposed to making 1 transaction for one recipient, you actually make 1 transaction on behalf or as a recipient for 2 users. So you can, with more transaction types, with more opportunity to test out something like this, there is flexibility available.
And of course, for businesses, the real thing that's been done here is it's solving problems. It's solving real world problems that people want to fix in a particular sort of way. And it shows the synergies that we have available to us with Curvegrid and OMG Network to be able to help solve those problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of improving things through collaboration, how can distribution of the points be made faster?
Perhaps I can just introduce this briefly, and I think Pong, you can fill in the gaps a little bit more. But as you mentioned, Pong, currently we only make use of two of the outputs for each transaction. So a single transaction on the OMG network distributes tokens to 2 addresses at a time. And basically the cap of the UTXO model is a single UTXO can only be referenced once per block, once per child chain interval, if I'm not mistaken. And so the idea is basically that through software that splits up your assets into multiple UTXOs, you can distribute sort of in a parallel manner. So for example, if you have, a list of 1,024 people awaiting distribution, rather than, performing the distribution in 500 child chain intervals, doing 2 at a time, you can actually just pre-split up all your UTXOs sort of in a binary tree formation and distribute basically to all 1,000 addresses, 1,024 addresses in one child chain interval. So that's like 7 intervals rather than 500. What do you think, Pong?
Yeah, I think so I think the type of transaction, as you mentioned, that's one way. But really for me, the way that if you take it onto another lower level on the child chain level, we allow users to make transaction, or actually on the JavaScript library level, when you make a transaction and then you make a subsequent transaction, you're waiting for that transaction to get confirmed, right? There is a method called chaining that we could do to really take its output of the previous transaction, throw it as an input, without waiting for block confirmation. So as you said, Dan, I think it's a matter of client's preference. So the way we're doing is just maximally secured method, right? It's you wait for the transaction to get confirmed first, then you make a subsequent one, as opposed to here you you can chain transaction together so that you can perhaps adding tens or even possibly up to 100 transaction into a block. So it's possible to do on the child chain level, but it's something that we need to be able to provide if the user required on the JavaScript client level. And just because this Plasma chain is all about security, so I think it's important for me to just describe the security trade-off that you would have to do. And the trade-off for that is you would have to trust the child chain operator for the period in which you make those transactions. So if you're chaining those tens or hundreds of transactions together, you're trusting that the operator is not Byzantine. Of course, within those periods of seconds, after that, and once the transactions are confirmed, everything is fine. So I think just a matter of understanding trust assumptions and understanding really weighting outcomes, weighting the value between having truly trustless transactions versus optimizing for business and optimizing for performance.
And the really cool thing about this as well is that it's not just one of these kind of purely theoretical things. I'm sure members of our community will remember well Plasma Dog. And one of the ways that they implemented their game system was to use this exact transaction chaining. So we know that we have the capability to do this if we need the demand.
I think it's a trade-off, right? You pick you can't have everything, right? You cannot have everything. And so, am I buying a cup of coffee, or am I funding a central banking system, right? And maybe one of those I'm going to use chain transactions, and the other ones I'm going to wait a block, right? And so and that's kind of the trade-off we make, and something that's come out for us over the last many months of collaborating with OMG is really coming back to what you said, Pong, around the UTXO model, where it's powerful because Ethereum, you basically have to lock the entire state of the blockchain for a given transaction. You can't compute transactions in parallel. And if anybody, at home, we can't see you on video, but put your hands up if you've ever tried to run an Ethereum node before, you'll know that the sync takes a really, really long time. I mean, I think on mainnet these days, if it's a full node, you're talking, you know, you've got to have like a server class, beefy machine with SSDs and tons of RAM and tons of processing power. And it's not even the bandwidth so much. It's that you have to crawl through all of the previous transactions and compute them in parallel. So it's like complete locking of the state of the blockchain for each transaction. So you've got 100 transactions in a block. You've got to go through those in series. Whereas on the OMG network, you can compute all of the UTXOs in parallel. It's kind of like row level locking in a database instead of table level locking. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, it gives you that flexibility. Like, you know, again, coming back to, do you want to do chain transactions and we'll just, you know, we'll go complete parallelization and take a small trade-off, you know, against that the operator for that one block is going to, you know, cause a problem. And, you know, I don't know, it could be, you know, loyalty points or small amounts of money, you know, or whatever, right? Versus, okay, no, do we pre-split the UTXOs, right? Again, could be small amounts of money or big amounts of money. Do we pre-split all of the UTXOs and deal with the parallelization that way? And I think, you know, what we're going to see over the coming months is different solutions, or not different solutions, but different uses of the technology from different customers. And, you know, we're going to learn more as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of the CPE and the process of it, what was the release process around the product?
Yeah, sure, I can take this. So like many other most modern software houses, we have a very kind of distinct process for releasing software. So for us, the software that we had was, of course, the client side, and that was the browser extension that we had on, that's now on the Google Store. And then, of course, there's a fee relayer service, and that's the backend service that pays the service on pays for the fee on behalf of the end user. So we have a set of logically distinct environments. We have a development environment, and then we have various different stages in which we test the software in each one of those environments. So in each individual environment, we have different characteristics that we want from that environment. So, for example, I know that the community pointed out that there was a sudden influx of transactions on our integration network, and there were a lot of eagle-eyed people in there that noticed. But there was actually more to it than that. We actually have a stress testing environment specifically for this purpose. So with our production services out there and living on mainnet that's handling real money, you know, software just doesn't go from somebody's laptop straight up to a production environment. You know, it has to be in a controlled, managed way that we actually push this out. And one of the things that we did even before it hit our integration environment, because we don't want to mess up any kind of ongoing integrations that some of our other integrators may have, we performed all of this testing on another private network. Then when we felt that it was safe to do so from that environment, we moved on to the integration environment. And that's where all the transactions that were spotted on the integration environment happened. And we use something called infrastructure as code to define our environment. So what that means is that we have like cookie cutter environments that sets in code. So we know that two environments are identical, with the only difference being that one's on Wopson and one's on mainnet. So that gives us the confidence in knowing that the testing that we've done previously, working in one environment, will work on another. So that's a kind of overview of the process that we had for the back end. As for the client side, that was a little bit more tricky. The reason for that is the process to get a extension permitted into Chrome is actually non-trivial in terms of time. So
I want to hear about this. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. I'm not kind of, you know, hitting on Google here. I mean, you know, the browser is what the average person uses to access a whole range of services, you know, be it banking services, novel financial services like we're providing, their daily news contents. But the moment that you have an extension in there, it has the capability in order to view things that you're doing with your browser. So, of course, there's a process that Google has in there. So initially, what we had to do is have this as a developer-only extension. So what that meant is that the end user had to go into the browser settings, flip the developer mode, and then be able to use the community points extension that we'd already built. But fortunately, not too long after we'd actually handed this deliverable over and posted it online, our extension was accepted into the Google registry.
You didn't have to like airdrop them some rock to convince them that this is a good thing, that they should expedite the approval?
I even contacted a friend inside of Google to try and expedite it, and yeah, even they couldn't move it on any faster.
That's good though, like, right, that because I mean, we're relying on Google and Mozilla, right, Apple to help us keep our users safe. When you're dealing with what will could someday, I mean, will someday, right, like real points that people care about, that or money, obviously, like you absolutely want that kind of those extra sorts of checks in there. Was there a lot of back and forth that you guys went through with them? Like, were they asking questions and you had to like revise things or provide legal documentation? Or
yeah, it's not to that level. We definitely had to wait like a decent amount of time. I assume that they have like a processes already involved that are sufficiently automated. Likely, I think it might likely require some human intervention on their side. But from my side, I'm just speculating as of now. But it wasn't back and forth. It's just more like just the wait time, and it's just not really, that wait time is not deterministic, right? It's not like so I can go on. I think we can go on all day, I think, Jake and I, about the distribution of like application distribution, right? Like, so Apple application distribution, for example, right, with Fortnite. So I think it's up to debate whether like the kind of like web distribution, which is like permissionless, you just publish any website or any application as you wish, versus an app store sort of model with extension store and an Apple App Store. It's up for debate whether which one is preferred. But from like a developer perspective, the App Store approach definitely takes its toll.
And can this application be useful outside of Reddit?
I think so. I think one of the things that we were able to demonstrate as part of this deliverable was that we are able to put together a product that is ready for use and solving problems immediately. And that means that, we have a proof of concept fee layer. We may work with future clients in the future, and they're like, okay, thanks for this software that does what we want, but we want to build it in a certain way. So at least what we have here is the building blocks of example to show how an integration can work. And not only do we show how it works, but we can show how it solves particular problems like paying for fees on the behalf of the user. So yep, I welcome any future clients as well that want to come work with us. Feel free to contact us with the contact us page on the OMG Network website. Yeah.
From, I think, just even like the dashboard, right? The dashboard is running off of like Curvegrid MultiBass. I think the APIs that you provided, the authentication layer, the key management on the HSM, like those are the application building blocks that could most definitely be reused for all sorts of other applications. Even this all the way to like the distribution mechanics as well, right? I think one more thing I would like to add on taking this application out and make it useful for other business domain is just the consideration of what kind of business that you are, what kind of problem you're trying to solve, and understanding that the customer and the actual end users, because right now our Reddit is really savvy, just to be fair, right? We're very savvy. Like everyone on Reddit knows how to use MetaMask, how to install public-private keys, seed phrases, and all these activities that for end users that are not blockchain literate will have like really hard time relying on. So I think on the side of like, if it's like other business domains, just having consideration of how the whole end-to-end application would work would likely involve like modification or making custom applications within their stack to cater to those sort of different types of users, and that involved like maybe abstracting away things like MetaMask to be inside an application, which is pretty similar to what Reddit is doing right now with their existing community points, right? Everything is sitting inside mobile application. Users never really know they are running embedded crypto wallets inside their app.
Exactly, it's transparent as it should be.
Right.
In the same way that nobody knows how TCP works, how HTTP works, it all happens for you. It's always kind of layers of abstraction on top that makes the user experience a lot better.
And it was a crazy month of just building. But to cap off this this whole fireside chat, what was it like working together on this project? Maybe Jeff, you could start.
It was great. I mean, it was, you can see me smiling, right? And here we are. I mean, a little more than a month later, and amidst everything else that's going on, just being kind of a very global team in general, right? Never having met and across different time zones and things like that. It was great. It was really great. And I think kind of being like a digitally native teams, it was pretty smooth, right? Like we've got the chat, the communal chat already set up. We've got all the other collaboration tools. We both work to what Jake, you were saying earlier. I think we both have fairly similar kind of software development and productionization and operation kind of philosophies. So, it elevates the entire experience because we don't have to spend time, dealing, talking about the kind of, the details of how are we going to do this, or how are we going to do this? We can focus on the problem at hand and the experience at hand, and you can just see the tremendous amount of work that the OMG Network team put into it, right? Like the documentation, and the videos, right? Walking everybody through it on webinars and sessions like this, the Reddit post and the Medium post itself, just completely comprehensive, and then the actual experience, right? And so it's just a pleasure to work with a team and a project where we feel we're really moving the needle on decentralization and on blockchain and on adoption. Because I would the end goal. I mean, this is just like a signpost on the way to the end goal of everybody being able to open up their smartphone and just interacting with whether it's points or governance or real money on the blockchain, and really kind of reinforced for us that OMG Network is a team that's doing all the right things in this respect. So big round of applause for the OMG Network team, not just Pong and Jake, but everybody else who's on this webinar and just around the world. Thank you.
Yeah. Just one last thing on I think really working together. I feel like from the OMG Network side, like we're the infrastructure provider, right? There is this myth, I think, in this industry where it's like, oh, if you're an infrastructure provider, you just build the software and then eventually somebody will come and integrate and then deliver to an end user, right? That will magically happen, hopefully at some point in time. But I think we both agree, Jeff, that that's likely not the case. That like even as an infrastructure provider, we need to build closer to the application integrator, right? Ensuring that everything's just like tighten the feedback loop and making sure that we're solving the problem for all kinds of end users, whether that is the integrators themselves or making life easier for the end users. So just really, I think we are aligned on that, like that, shipping something as complex as a blockchain infrastructure or as a application as a service like MultiBass, like you really, there is elements of collaborations and elements of solving a problem that is missing from like this general, I think, just the blockchain industry.
Yeah, I mean, usability is a huge issue still. Doesn't matter if you're a big enterprise and you can afford to go hire like IBM to build you a blockchain, or you're a small or medium-sized business, or even an individual. Like usability is a huge issue, and we're so close to it, we forget about that. Like 24-word seed phrases and like chain reorgs and gas, right? I mean, we live and breathe that all day, and it's important to remember that like the vast majority of users out there what doesn't matter whether individuals or organizations or corporations aren't. And so I think that, there's two aspects. The first is that it's that old cliche that the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. Like together, OMG Network, Curvegrid, right? We can, what we produce together is going to be greater than, if we were building it on our own, essentially, or just multiplying by 2, right? And part of it is our contacts and context and experience, the second is that we, as technologists, we have to constantly be conscious that we're not building in a vacuum, right? There's all these other things that are going on, all these other interests, and the road of history is littered with technology that was a really great idea, but didn't quite make it. Just for all the reasons you mentioned, Pong, that we kind of lose perspective. And so it's actually collaborations like this that I think for Curvegrid, helps bring us a lot of perspective and bring us a lot of extra, context around what we're doing, and, validating it and helping us adjust and keep things on the right course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that wraps up our fireside chat. The heart of it all is collaboration and making things happen. And for all of our attendees, if you haven't yet, or if you haven't checked out our submission, feel free to scan this QR code, upvote, review, comment, tell us what you think about the CPE. If you haven't tried it yet, and if this is the first time you're hearing about it, do try it out, throw out some rocks. It's going to be a lot of fun. Our community has been enjoying it a lot. And that ends this. We have 20 minutes left on this platform. Feel free to meet and chat with everyone. I see that there are a couple of people who have asked some questions. Just find us on the floor and ask us away, and we'll see you there. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Curvegrid.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll be sticking around.
Thank you.